All right, so while you guys are thinking about your national park, I'm just gonna kind of flip through a couple of slides, call out some more thoughts and ideas about cave management. For example, what is the messaging about dealing with Geomyces destructans? In addition to the physical installation of those cave gates, right, the physical use limitation, gating off certain areas, all access to the cave system in that case. But the messaging is very positive. This is a prescriptive, injunctive message. This is a positive command. Help us protect bats. How do you do that? Go through the white nose syndrome station, right? Sterilize your feet seeds. Squish through a couple of steps of Pine Sol or whatever else. Or Lysol disinfectant. Okay? So it's always a combination of techniques. We're never just gating people off. We're at least telling them why and providing a positive way forward in this case. All right? All right, so anybody, volunteers. What's your national park? What's one particular, maybe ecologically or individual species-based fragile component or area or zone or site in your park? And let's brainstorm how you might work on that. Yeah.
I did Zion. They have a lot of like archaeological sites there, and so like in places like that, like they'll have like pottery and things, and then like when people go to like look at them, limiting like their ability to like stay there for a long time, or like camping, or like having fires, or like eating food that would attract like rodents to come in.
100%.
Stuff like that.
Yeah, so Zion National Park, right? Beautiful geologic structures, amazing hydrology with the, was it the Virgin River flowing through there? The Narrows, Angel's Landing is a super fun hike with a bunch of chains bolted onto the rocks so you can pull yourself along. The cliff face, super fun, and a ton of ancestral First Nations relics, remnants, artifacts, sites in and around Zion National Park. So, part of the answer is limiting how much time people can spend specifically at those archaeology sites, right? So it's okay to rock up on them, hike to them, check them out, get a photo, think, wow, this is really cool, appreciate it, come to an understanding about it, have a chance to reflect on how amazing this place is and what it tells me about myself, to look at paleo-human sites like this, but I can't camp there. So let's go a little bit deeper on that. How does our behavior change when we're walking up to a site to take a photograph versus walking up to a site to camp? What's different about that? Why might camping at an archaeology site be orders of magnitude, just far and away more damaging to that site than having maybe 100 times as many people just walking up to it and taking a photo and then leaving? Yeah. People have to go to the bathroom. So you're digging a cat hole. But it's not just you. It's you and all the tens of thousands of people who have the same biological necessity from now until the next 100 years, right? Okay? Good. We really don't want people digging in arc sites. What else? Brennan.
You gotta set up your stuff like a tent or hammock if you have that. So that.
Yeah. How many of you guys and gals, and I feel labeled by this, I feel so seen by this, or personally attacked by this, depending on your perspective. How many of you guys, when you're setting up your tent, you don't like stand in one spot and assemble the tent like in the air, which you could do with a freestanding tent, and then set it lightly down and gingerly step inside the tent and so forth? Anybody? Me neither. Right. Like, throw your pack down and you grab your tent. You sort of, maybe if you're like me, make old dad noises like, oh yeah, man, I've been hiking all day. Oh. And I kind of wander around, look for a flat spot, maybe kick a rock out of the way so I don't sleep on it, right? And then all of the other things that you do, kind of wandering around, moving around, right? So, the, 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 is on a heat map of impact relative to each square meter of the site, right? There's a white hot center, and then successively less impact in rings radiating from the center of that campsite. In a big campsite, that white hot center is pretty big. And campsites never shrink. They only grow. Because the impact happens with the first 10 people camping there, not with the last 10,000 people camping there, like we saw in our impact rate graph several weeks ago. Okay. Perfect example. Zion National Park cultural sites, we can absolutely encourage. We can go really hard on running trails to these sites so that people can take a picture, so that people can see and reflect and feel a connection across deep time even, right? 10,000 or more years in some cases, maybe not at Zion, but 10,000 years of human existence, right? How many generations of humans is that, right? 1,000 generations or whatever. 500 generations of humans, and have a really meaningful experience in a site with a bunch of broken pottery and piled stones that used to be a structure, right? But we can't countenance camping because the behaviors are totally different. The impact pressure is totally different per person in that kind of a case. All right, somebody else. What's your national park? What's a site in it? What does it have to do with maybe caves or other similar impact patterns? How can we manage it? We'll brainstorm that last part with you. Anybody else? It's okay if it doesn't have caves, not a lot of parts, but
Yeah, it's kind of a tentative connection to caves, but I remember my parents said no, by the way. I remember on that backcountry trail we went on, some of the ridge tops, there was like a very, very thin layer of soil on top of the like bigger size rock that's not really broken down.
okay.
And the trail just like went right down to rock because it was all runoff soil.
All right. So everybody goes down to the rock. Use evidence of past human passage as a cue or permission or release or cue for where we could go or where we should go. Should is a very powerful modal verb. Should. Not where we can, but where we should. It's a very, very powerful thing, and it's subtly communicated to us all the time. For example, here's one rack of pamphlets inside the visitor center at Mammoth Cave National Park. And just like a trail going to a specific rock, we have a bunch of full-color glossy pamphlets with maps and essentially marketing copy, so a bunch of words that imply you should go to this place and see this cool stuff, like come to horse country in Kentucky. Horses are cool. Let's check it out. And here's a Kentucky Trails and Lodging map with another picture of a beautiful horse on there. And diamond caverns. Diamonds sound valuable. I bet diamond caverns full of value, right? So marketing is persuasive language that is generally fairly subtle, but it's effective. That's why you see so much of it, right? So we can have physical release or cues, essentially low-key marketing to your visitors where to go because other people have gone there and trampled a path in the way. Or we can proactively kind of shape this stuff even back in the visitor center before they ever see that trail, for example, and help folks think about, okay, where are we geared up to have people? Where are we ready to rock with lots and lots of folks? All right? Cool. Thank you, Brent. One more. Anybody else? What's your national park? What's a place that might be very intensively used in your national park? Let's brainstorm what we might do about it. enjoy a poorly lit video of the only National Park Service run cafeteria almost 100 feet underground. Why is it important to run an industrial cafeteria inside of a cave? I don't know either. But back in the 50s and 60s, this was seen as the pinnacle of the service approach to the National Park Service serving you experiences instead of a responsibility ethic of let's figure out how to be in this place and everybody bring in your own food. It's not going to kill you to hike in a couple of granola bars and hike out the wrappers yourself. Thank you very much. Okay. All right, so one more person. What's your national park? What's one place in it that might be pretty intensively used? You want to double up on Zion?
No, I was going to talk about fiery furnace, how you can't, like, that leaves are not there every day because the plants are, like, really fragile.
Sorry, speak up a little bit. I can't hear you over the AC. So fiery furnace.
Yeah, like, there's, like, plants there that, like, they're just, like, really rare and, like, specialized or whatever, and they start, not people can walk through the park every day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So does your park have any rare or fragile plants? Unfortunately, those plants tend to grow where people want to be.
And, like, soils and stuff there, I think, are, like, special.
Yeah. So fiery furnace is one of the areas that has cryptobiotic crust. Very slowly growing there. Yeah. It's a tough environment. Beautiful spot though. Really beautiful. So, we throw this question out to the class. We have a place, fiery furnace, where a lot of people want to go, where the vegetation resources, we'll be talking about those real soon, are very, very, very fragile and slow growing. And people want to be pretty much everywhere at Zion and affiliated parks. So, what do? This is a more broadly applicable question across a lot of parks. Fragile resources, intensive use pressure. Of course, it falls to us this semester to diagnose what could we do about that. How do we help people move through, or not, in a fragile resource environment? Anybody? What do you think? We got those 4 strategies, right? Increase real or effective supply, modify the resource to be more resistant or resilient from impacts, modify visitor use either directly or indirectly, indirectly through persuasive or informational and educational approaches, or 4th and finally, limiting use either temporarily or permanently in space or time. What can we do at fiery furnace? What do you think, gang? Fence people. What? Oh, yeah, I agree. If we had to. You could put up whole ass lengths of chain link fence around sections of fiery furnace. They did at Mammoth Cave. It's ugly as sin. But it sends a pretty strong message. Hey, we are capable of so much destruction, even passively, even without really trying to in a cave environment, much less at fiery furnace, a very nutrient-limited system with fragile vegetation. So, yeah, we're going to be pretty upfront about this because we can't afford more damage than has already been done to this specific spot. Can't do it. All right, so among our 4 strategies, this kind of fencing at fiery furnace or in Mammoth Cave or in your national park, which of our 4 strategies does this fall under? I'll give you a hint. At least 2 of the strategies can mess with fencing. Brandon.
I'm going to say limit resource or modify resource.
Modifying the resource. How so?
Because you're having to put in the posts, and that's going to change like the ground right there.
Yeah.
We're going to have to bring that stuff in. It's going to lead to more compaction or erosion, so it's going to change the resource.
Very perceptive. So in this case, the footers for this fencing is not drilled into the bedrock of the cave, like you would imagine, steel stanchions for like handrails and stuff like that, not drilled into the cave. They are poured, they have poured concrete footers, which are then buried and covered over with mud. We have plenty of mud in Mammoth Cave. Like the Green River is still legit flowing through some of the lower galleries of Mammoth Cave, still gouging the cave out or dissolving the cave out. Right? So we can hide temporary, non-damaging modifications under the native cave surface. Pretty cool, all right? A fence like this is at least modifying visitor behaviors directly. We're not trying to reason with people. We're not trying to educate people. We're literally just fencing them off. Okay, so this is direct behavior modification, strategy 3. And this is a temporary, but effectively permanent within the scale of a single cave tour. But temporary in the sense that we can remove this and the habitat is unharmed from the presence of that fence. So this is a temporary use limit, strategy 4 out of 4, in space. We're not changing the times that people can go through here, but we are cutting off part of the where people can go in here, okay? So, even parts of that 2% are fenced off. Man, it's like successively smaller and smaller wedges of a very small pie that people are allowed to access in there. Okay, cool. And then the information and education part of visitor modification strategy 3, the other half of it, shows up in cases like this. This dude is like 80 years old. He was a ranger for about 50 years before he retired a couple of years ago. So, guy's a local school teacher, works summers with the Park Service. This is a thing that some people do. And this is the pre-trip briefing. Now this guy looks kind of like a drill instructor or a drill sergeant, depending on which branch of the military you're looking at. He's actually a really friendly, funny guy. But in the beginning here, he puts on a serious face to help everybody understand, hey, if you have a cardiac event, it's going to be several hours before we get you to a hospital, and you're definitely in trouble if that's the case. So no judgment, no problem, no penalty. If you don't feel like you can climb 150 stairs and be down there for 2 hours straight without a bathroom break, and you're not 100% sure that you're good to go on this hike, go get a refund for your ticket or talk with me and I'll help you find another tour that is sort of doable with your particular motivations and constraints. Okay? And he's going to say that message about 5 different times in this 15-minute pregame show talk. And he's going to say it 5 different ways to connect with different visitors. So he's going to try and connect with a person who's a little bit borderline on like aerobic capacity for a 2-hour walk. He's going to try and get in the head and help somebody who maybe has a metabolic condition where they need to have food within the next 2 hours to regulate the blood sugar, for example, and you cannot have food on this tour because those crumbs can totally screw up the ecosystem, even just a couple of crumbs, and so forth. So he's trying to catch sort of different kinds of visitors. He's giving a section of this talk, one of those 5 repetitions of this message of, hey, this is what we're all looking at, this is what we're facing on this trip coming up, to parents of young children. Because young children are going to have a whole bunch of really particular needs and maybe a still baking capacity to make reasoned and safe choices in a relatively dangerous environment like a cave. Now, this section of the cave that we're going to on this tour, as far as caves go, none of these are dangerous. These are like 0 on a scale of 0 to like Thai spicy in terms of danger, okay? And that's okay. But for parents of small children, even a 0 on that scale is more than 0 on that scale, right? So the same message formatted for different kinds of visitors with various different kinds of needs so that we can catch as many different kinds of folks as we can and help folks understand what's going to be appropriate, safe, and what the real risks are in this place. And that's hard to do, right? You can't give a quantitative risk discussion to a 5-year-old of, the per capita injury rate in this cave for children of your size and stature is X number. That number doesn't mean anything, right? That number doesn't mean anything to most people. We're really bad at thinking about specifics of statistics in everyday life. That's why people play the lottery. It's amazing. But that's how we fund our school systems in the U.S. All right. Here is a separate person doing the same or similar kind of talk at Mammoth Cave. There's entire facilities given over just for this safety talk because this is such a huge part of every one of these tours that everybody has to develop that. So you saw the previous guy had this list of things that you have to say, and everybody's got that kind of cue card just to glance at to make sure they got all the boxes checked, because they cannot afford to forget any part of the safety discussion, right? It's a whole big production. And this is okay, right? This is all intensive management where the resource is fragile and the use density or use pressure are very high, okay? So we get through the safety and sort of sensitizing discussion here out in front of the visitor center. We might be a mile or two from the trailhead or the cave entrance, or the entry trail to the cave entrance. So the buses, the propane-powered buses, so they're not blowing a bunch of diesel smoke on you, are lining up kind of right behind us, off screen or off camera to the left. And we go through this whole 15-minute safety talk. Then we get on the buses. And we go through a whole 10-minute safety talk, because holy cow, man, once we get in this cave, Mother Nature does not care about your hopes and dreams. So we're going to give it to you again. And so you get through the whole ranger safety talk. And then you got to go through again and see it a different way and so forth. Right? So we're passing a bunch of signs at the cave entrance. We're passing a bunch of signs in the visitor center and so forth. Right? All these repetitive efforts. So for like an hour before you get into the cave, you're getting dosed over and over with spaced repetition of the same message, formatted for lots of different kinds of visitors. All right? So when you see a leave no trace ethic message, it's going to be contextualized to your national park's specific ecological vulnerabilities and specific human behavioral foibles of your national park. Right? Each national park has its own sort of suite of goofy traditions or annoying or damaging visitor behaviors that just happen to be a thing at that place in that particular way, as an expression of human unique behaviors in a unique place, and so forth. Okay? So we've got on the bus. We've got the visitor center safety talk done. We've got the bus safety talk done. We've got signs on the bus. And then we get to the trailhead, and they give us another talk. Oh my God. But we're also starting to shift from the spaced repetition of those safety messages and saying again, look, if anybody's just not feeling 100%, that's okay. No judgment. Just kind of hang back. We'll take the group in and we'll bring you back to the visitor center for free. We'll give you a 100% refund. We'll eat the credit card transaction fee gladly. We won't make you feel bad for making a very wise decision to not go on this particular tour, having learned about the specific vagaries of that tour and so forth. And now after 4 or 5 repetitions of a bunch of different safety messages that are all the same safety message formatted different ways, then we finally get into the cave in this case. All right? And even with that, we get a bunch of specifics in terms of impacts, right? Everybody's got to vandalize, apparently, right? There's so many photos of this. God, there's billions of them. There's just a lot of it. And for some of these other ecological considerations, because some of the cave entrances and access points are artificial, like this one, where previous landowners looking to cash in on cave tourism back in the late 1800s and early 1900s, before this place was set aside as a national park, people would dynamite in new entrances, because if you could find a cave entrance to Mammoth Cave before it was a national park on your farmland, for example, then you owned effectively all of Mammoth Cave if you owned any access to it. Does that make sense? Cool. So a lot of people created these additional entryways into the cave using stuff like dynamite, and what that did was it changed how the cave breathed. As the sun goes up, warms the atmosphere, and changes the air pressure, the cave breathes in, right? So warm the air, increase the pressure, wind flows into the cave, sun goes down, earth cools off on that side, and air flows out. So twice a day the cave's breathing in and out. All these extra entrances really changed how that was working, how the cave was breathing, and that was killing off some of those communities inside the cave. So this video is us walking through a legitimate airlock. So we're providing human access, that a door that we can lock every night, to keep everybody safe and prevent folks from meddling in the cave overnight. And it stops the flow of air back and forth from this place that didn't used to do that for the last 10,000 years, or however long this area has been. Okay? Cool. Let's end a few minutes early. We want to go forth and think about these things, and hopefully the weather's going to hang tight for us. We're going to switch over into vegetation resources and how we manage trees and shrubs and forest forms for forest recreation and park management use. And we'll do some field stuff, so hopefully the weather cooperates. I'm around for questions if you have them. Otherwise, we'll see you on Wednesday.